And today we're going to start covering the ideas of attitudes and persuasion. So most of us, again, think about attitudes as our judgment, our feelings about something, whether it's Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Barack Obama, your president, your friend. You have a kind of a judgment, a valence. Either it's positive or negative, that's how you feel about that person. Yet everywhere we go, every day, there's people out there trying to change our opinion. For example, when I step out, I see billboards telling me that Coke is better than Pepsi, right? They tell you that certain kinds of sneakers are better than other kinds of sneakers. One politician is saying Barack Obama is not that great and you should vote for another person. So that's the idea of persuasion, is the act of someone trying to change your attitude on someone or something. They're trying to persuade you to change it so you can believe them, just like you use the term persuasion in any other way, right? They're trying to change your behavior, change your ideas on a certain topic. So we're going to talk about some ways that people use for persuasion. In the literature, when you look at attitude change, persuasion, the majority of the focus of the research focuses on two kind of routes: the central route of persuasion and the peripheral route of persuasion. So these are two kind of ways that we could change our ideas. How can we change our mind on something? Now, in the central route of persuasion, imagine it's central, and the kind of adjectives that relate to using the central route of persuasion are: it's effortful, it's thoughtful, it's logical, it's evidence-based, and it's very highly mathematical. It's very thoughtful. So for example, if someone wants to say, you know, Curtis, you should really change your opinion on the topic of, say, universal health care. Now, a central route of persuasion, what they would do is lay out kind of a pro and con. It's very analytical. There's positives and negatives, and they're going to show me the negatives outweigh the positives. They're going to give me statistics. What are the numbers, right? There might be comparisons. What do other nations who use universal healthcare end up looking like? How much money is going to be spent in doing healthcare, right? So it's a very thoughtful, effortful process. To really understand and change my mind on this healthcare using the central route of persuasion, you have to do a lot of convincing. It has to be a very logical, thoughtful, analytical kind of discussion, right? So when you read a report or the government report or the plan on healthcare, that's kind of a central route of persuasion. They're trying to change your mind on that topic. You buy this, right? It's very, very deliberate. You have to pay a lot of attention to the details, weigh the pros and cons, and really see both sides of the stories. That's central route of persuasion. You can imagine that every day we rarely want to do this after the hard days of work teaching. You don't want to go home and then think about issues in a central route of persuasion. You don't want to persuade someone by having them think a lot and just really pay attention to the details and whatnot. So the other route of persuasion, the peripheral, the one that goes around, is basically based on shortcuts and heuristics. So it's much faster, much easier. And if you don't want to pay attention and pay too much effort to think about something, you basically rely to heuristics and shortcuts. So in an issue like healthcare, someone might just tell you that healthcare leads to more debt. And that's a word that triggers negative thoughts. You don't want the country to be in any more debt. So you just basically have a negative idea on that topic, right? Another example is people who use peripheral routes of persuasion to persuade you on something. They rely on kind of the bells and whistles of persuasion. So when you see a commercial and it's really loud and colorful and noisy and things are happening and animated, these are all peripheral routes to persuasion. That says nothing about how good the cereal, or the sneakers are, or the food, or anything. But they use kind of all these images, positive images and sounds to get your attention, to pay attention, and then by that you'll think that it's a good product. Similarly, you can think of celebrity endorsements, having really attractive people sell an item to you. How good-looking someone is has no impact on how good the product is. Just because Michael Jordan sells underwear, that doesn't mean it's better underwear, right? So the idea is that when we use peripheral routes of persuasion, we have these shortcuts and heuristics. We think, oh, I like that person. That person's selling underwear. I like the underwear also. That's basically what a shortcut is. What are some other shortcuts? Let's see, we have attractive people, colorful things that grab your attention. Really simple ideas. We talked about just having keywords like debt, or if you want to sell healthcare, you say, oh, poor people are suffering, right? And something like an information like that without context, without numbers, without statistics, is able to become a shortcut for us to believe something. That's a peripheral route of persuasion. right? So these are the two roots of persuasion. And you might want to ask, so Curtis, which root is better to persuade someone in doing so? And there's been a lot of research about what is the best way, what is the best match for which root of persuasion to use. And the finding generally basically is that if your audience has a lot of attention, if it's something that's very meaningful and it's very important to them, then it's better to present like a central root of persuasion. They're going to respond much better to, for example, to detailed discussions, analyses. Two-sided stories is another example of central roots of persuasion. When you present both the pros and the cons and you weigh them, that's something that you have to be really attentive to pay attention to, right? Now, if your audience is distracted, if they're not very thoughtful in the situation, if they're not very kind of hung on to how important, they don't feel it's very important on that issue, then it's more likely that you would use a peripheral root of persuasion to make an impact on them. So if you're just, say, after a sports game or at a sports game, you have the billboards or people are just driving by, and it's something that's not very important to them, like which brand of Coca-Cola they should be drinking or what kind of clothes they should be wearing, then it's more likely that you would use the peripheral root of persuasion, right? Things like using funny things, humor, or celebrities. So just people who are passing and not paying too much attention, they respond much better to that kind of information, right? I'll give you one more example of what's a successful use of persuasion, which is that of using fear appeals. Basically, when people give you an advertisement that says if you don't do something, then people are going to die. One of the earliest examples of this was in a political ad, where they say that's kind of implying that if you don't vote for a certain candidate, then the atomic bomb is going to go off and children are going to die, right? So people get really afraid. So other examples would be like you see smoking commercials where they show people dying, or the black lung, or skeletons. These are kind of frightening, deadly images. And what is the research on that as a kind of using fear appeal as a heuristic to get someone to either be persuaded or not? And basically the finding is that if you accompany that message with a solution, scaring them does not help at all. What needs to happen is that if you scare them and then also give them a way to prevent that kind of outcome. So I could say that if you don't floss, your teeth are going to fall out and they're going to rot and you're going to die. That's pretty fearful. And if I present to you the plan, like if by flossing, all you have to do is floss, spend like 3 minutes a day flossing, and you're going to avoid this fate worse than death, then it's going to be more persuasive. So that's one little kind of outcome from the peripheral studies. I'm going to talk about 3 different techniques